So we are officially live. Hello, hello to everyone. Happy Monday. We are going to give you all a few seconds to come on in this room. As you know, we are back for another candid, crucial community conversation. And we are excited to have with us tonight the amazing, the community activist herself, motivational, inspirational speaker, and life coach, Miss Dannelle Mann. So as you come on, say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We want to hear from you. Let us know where you're tuning in from as you come on. Please come on and share out this broadcast because we are excited. I am excited about the move of God tonight. So we are just going to give you all a few seconds to tune in. I am also going to share out this broadcast. So as you come on, say hello to us. Let us know where you're tuning in from because as I said tonight, God is going to be glorified.
Yes,
So
Lord.
come on in this room. This is going to be so good.
Amen.
Yeah,
It really is.
I'm excited. If you would, as you come on, say hello. Also, share out this broadcast as you know, we are definitely going to be speaking about building our community and just having a really candid, crucial conversation about everything that's happening in our nation and how we choose to respond to all that is happening. So, as you come on, say hello. At this time, I'm actually going to podcast, but we are back. So I'm
Yes.
going to give Danielle an opportunity to introduce herself at this time.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us on this evening. I am Dannelle Mann, community activist, poet, life coach, purpose pusher. Whatever the Lord chooses for me to do, I'll step in it gladly as long as He gets the glory. So I thank you all for joining us on tonight. And I thank Shay, Divine Cisco, for having us and for all the great work she's doing on this show and for Kingdom and for the community. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you. And I'm so excited about tonight. I really feel like it's going to be an amazing show, as you always have great shows. But I really think that God is going to definitely be glorified in this one.
Amen. So again, Danielle, as always, whenever I call on you, my sister in Christ, you have never said no. So to you, I appreciate you just being intentional about connecting to build the kingdom of God and to push the vision for United 4C Strong. And United 4C Strong is just being committed to having continuous conversation,
Right.
crucial conversation that will build and engage community to bring the unity that's much needed back into our community. So we have Michelle Bolden Hammond who says, "Good evening, ladies." Good evening. So I guess like we're just not even going to belabor the time. We're going to go and we're going to jump right into the discussion tonight as it relates to community engagement by first just kind of starting talking about and discussing some of what has really given our nation a wake up call. So, as people are coming in, I do want to kind of just speak to this platform and why God said now is the time. So, the candid, crucial community conversations. Actually, I was on my way to South Carolina, and God said, now is the time. You have tried to engage community before, but now while the momentum is high, you need to continue to facilitate the conversation, to provide the education, as well as to share the ways that different community members can become engaged and involved. And it's easy for us to sit back and discuss the problems, the issues, but can we be a part of the solution? So I guess tonight I want you to start, Danielle, with just sharing your insight, your perspective on what is happening in our nation.
I want to say that I think what is happening in our nation is just more visible now. It's not anything new. It's nothing new under the sun. The Bible tells us that. And racism is exactly what's going on in our nation, and very strong, because we are beginning to see it due to technology. We're seeing more killings. We're seeing more racism. People are being exposed in stores. The word nigger is being used, and we are hearing it a lot more now. It hasn't stopped being used over these years, but we're seeing it because technology is able to show us more. I really believe, personally, my belief is that racism never really died. It just became hidden and covered up a little bit more. And then when technology began to expand, it began to expose it a little bit more. And right now, what is going on in our nation, I said it for 3 years straight, and I don't think anybody heard me. This is the season of exposure. How people really feel are coming out. And now we've been put in a place where we're being pressed because, a lot of us have been confined to our homes and different things like that. And so what's in you will come out of you. And so that's what's going on in our nation, the season of exposure. What's been going on for years that has been covered up is now being exposed, and in great magnitude at that.
That's good. So I gotta agree. We're home. A lot of the things that we would run from normally, or we would mask in our busy lifestyles from work to everything that we would do and everything we would be to other people. Now we are forced to deal with those things internally, as well as, of course, the pressure that provokes another level of patience. Will we have patience through the process of all that's happening in our nation, and how we respond to that is extremely crucial. So I guess, prior to us coming live, we were talking about just our response, and I actually want you to kind of share with us in terms of what God has been speaking to you as it relates to our response.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you as well as I could before. Can you speak up a little bit? Because I didn't even hear the question that you asked.
So I said, prior to us coming on live, we were talking about how God has been speaking to you as it relates to our response. Could you share some of
Yes,
that insight as it relates to where God has had you as it relates to our response?
yes. A lot of times, we really don't study and read and practice scripture. The scripture says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to wrath, slow to become angry. And one of the things that the Lord has been dealing with me for the last, I want to say it's been more than 3 months, it's probably been about 4 or 5, is that we have to learn to not allow the enemy and other people to push us so that we will react instead of calmly responding. I've noticed lately, and I've sat in a room full of different people. We've had this discussion about traffic, and people riding your back in traffic when racism was high, and the things that are being said to you in stores and things like that. And I keep telling people that responding calmly, because the Bible says a soft answer turns away wrath, versus reacting to what your flesh feels. Because listen, let's be real. When you call me anything other than Danielle, my flesh automatically wants to respond. I don't want to pray for you instantly. I don't want to stop and be like, you know what, bless you. That has to be something that you practice at home in your private time with God, self-discipline and self-control. Because if you don't, what you, sorry, my little technical difficulties. Sorry, guys. What you don't practice, what you don't put in you, won't be able to come out of you. So a lot of times when I'm at home, I practice peace and being quiet instead of, and I'm telling you, when I tell you I've been tested for the last 5 or 6 months, people have been saying whatever they have wanted to out of their mouths to me. And I could respond in my old man, but behold, God has done a new thing. No, you cannot continue to respond negatively or react negatively. Sometimes you have to just step back and say, do I really need to even respond to them? Am I even who they called me? When you begin to know who you are and who God calls you, somebody can call you anything, but you're not going to respond to something that you don't identify with.
That's really good. I got to tell you, that is good. And I say that because some of our viewers may not understand the move of God, right? So we have an understanding because of who we are, and just us being able to really dissect scripture and
Mhm.
having the gifting that God has graced us to have. So one of the things that I've been intentional about just being mindful of is when I do address situations, as Taquine Daniels, he says, applying more grace.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
easy for me to, in my selfish nature, to say, oh no, I'm going to be defensive about this because of my emotion. But when I
Yes.
really understand that the spirit man requires another level of attentiveness to the needs of people that they don't even recognize there is a need, I respond and I apply grace. So one
Yes.
of the things that I pray, even before I come on broadcast, I said, God, allow grace to grow me and allow grace
Yes.
to go before me. So when
Yes.
I'm speaking, I understand that even though I have matured to another dimension, spiritually, everybody does not understand what that
Mhm.
dimension looks like, or they really don't understand spiritually what it means to pivot to the next level.
Right.
So it's
Absolutely.
a level of grace in our response that we must have, because ultimately, like you said,
Whew.
no good thing
None.
dwelleth in our flesh.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you said the most powerful thing that I love that you just said was our emotions. We have to learn to step out of being so emotional, so dramatic, so emotional, having to even respond sometimes when really, and I told someone this last night, it takes strength to walk away from a situation. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It takes strength to say, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to allow you to pull me out of my character, especially now because we're being watched, we're being recorded. It's all about defamation of character. It's all about the enemy trying to get it to the point where somebody can say that you are not who you claim to be or who you speak to be. We ought to never let our good be evil spoken of. And when I'm explaining it to somebody who doesn't understand how we understand scripturally, one of the greatest things I ever heard, and I believe it was Joyce Myers that said this: "He who angers you controls you." We have to learn to walk in a spirit of immediate forgiveness. That is a challenge. That is a challenge. But when you practice it, because you have to ask yourself, what are you really taking from me or doing to me by calling me out my name, by saying I'm other than who I know I am? I can't give you that much power. We've got to take our power back. We've given it away for far too long.
That's good. However, it becomes challenging for a person that don't even really understand or can identify what that power is.
True,
So some
true.
people think about power as being in a level of authority,
Right,
right? Or they see power as I have to acquire something to call it my own in order for
mhm,
me to be in a position of power.
right.
But for us, we understand that not yielding to what's sent to disturb us
Yes,
emotionally and being able to yield spiritually to apply grace in a situation where once before the petty side of us would come out, right? So one of the
absolutely.
things I had said to a young lady not too long ago, she said, I just love how positive you are. And I said, let me explain. I can't take the credit for it. I said, the joy that I have, God, He gave it to me. But in
Yes,
exchange for the joy He's given me, He took away the control panel. So I could not flip the switch.
that's good. That's real good.
He gave me something, but he took something away so that
Mhm.
I no longer had the control in my hand.
Mm,
And a lot of times, what we are finding in our society is we're finding that there are so many people that have a statement that they feel as though they must make in order to can take their power back. So let's talk about that. When you say take your power back, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Taking your power back means practicing self discipline and self control to know that you have the right to not respond and walk all the way away from a situation that is not beneficial for you or the other party. That's the power you take back when you understand that you don't have to be puppeted by your emotions. You said it earlier. We do not have to be puppeted by our emotions. And yes, it takes practice. And yes, it takes self discipline. And yes, it takes self control. But it's all about investing in you. So you know that I have a choice every day. Either I'm going to respond positively or I'm going to respond negatively. What are the consequences? And when we start to think about the consequences of us, it could be death, jail, prison, um, you hurting someone else, anything like that. When you start to think about the power that you give the enemy or another person to pull you out of character, just by mere words, sometimes, just by mere words. When you start to speak self affirmation or look in the word and find out what God said about you, or just every day get up, you said something earlier, understanding, like Taekwon said, more grace. How you look at the other person, you don't know what they went through. You don't know what kind of day they've had. How about you say something to them like, you know what, bless you, I love you, or walk away or anything. You could just really decrease or digress and help the situation out more. But a lot of times we feel like we have to say something. We have to respond. We have to be heard. And a lot of times we really don't. Really don't. That's taking your power back. We really don't. Silence is a very powerful tool. Very.
That's good. A lot of people don't see it that way. They see it as silence is a punk. And that's one of the things that I talk about even throughout this time, this crucial time in our nation. A lot of times I see people saying, when you're silent, that means you support, or you are for what the national statement may be. And I said, wait a second, when looking at it from a different lens, just because I'm silent, it doesn't necessarily mean I support. Sometimes my silence simply means that at this point in time, I don't know how to support. I don't know how to engage without creating additional problems.
Yes.
So in my silence, give me my silence, because my silence is me actually supporting you without offending you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes we have to simply be able to tell, sometimes I don't know what to say in a situation. And so I remain silent, because just saying stuff to be heard is not necessary all the time. A lot of times we don't even have to speak. It's not necessary. It's the inappropriate time. And sometimes this is how I operate. I don't care if it's sister, brother, friend, co-worker, boss. If the father don't tell me to speak, I hush, because I can speak prematurely and mess up a whole situation. So sometimes you have to know when to speak, and when to remain silent. And sometimes that's difficult, especially when you're pressed against a wall and your emotions are high. What's going on in our nation has affected our community. And what's not going on in our communities is why what's going on in our nations is going on.
Speak to that. So I guess before we jump into that community engagement, because that was good. What's not happening in our community is a direct result of what's happening in our nation. So we want to come back to that. But before we get to that, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot in conversation is that racism is taught. What are your thoughts about that?
I absolutely believe that. A child, when I grew up in New Jersey, I had white friends, I had black friends. At home, we were not, and as a matter of fact, I had a white grandmother. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. But when we went to school, and in my household, we weren't taught to dislike someone for the color of their skin. But I have seen households where they were taught that at a young age, and some of them have grown up to really believe the things. Look at us. If your grandma taught you to cook pasta a certain way, you take that thing with you into adulthood. You don't care what nobody else say. My grandmother taught me to make this way. This is going to stick with me. It's the same thing with racism. If your parents teach you that this person is not to be trusted, not to be liked, they're lazy, or that person is automatically racist because of the color of their skin, then when you grow up, you take some of those things with you, even though it's pure ignorance, because that's what's being taught, pure ignorance. And it's developed into racism.
That was good.
Yeah,
That was
pure
good.
ignorance. We
Pure
don't take the
ignorance.
time to get to know who each other, one another. We don't take the time to get to know one another. And what people don't understand, they fear. That's the
Mm.
big problem in the nation. It's a whole different one in our community. So when you're ready for me to talk about that,
So yeah,
I
actually,
will.
that's exactly where we're steering to. You're right. I also too would agree that racism is something that is taught. I do know we have a history of racism from many years prior to us and our various generations. However, I can say, from my personal opinion, that racism is taught. Especially now, you see a lot of younger individuals speaking about racism as if they lived back in the 1960s. And they're only speaking prematurely from what they heard or what was taught in the home environment or within the community. So you said something earlier that was so defining. What we lack doing in our community is a direct result of what's happening in our nation. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. One of my favorite scriptures, Matthew 12:29. How can you um, break into a strong man's house unless you first bind a strong man? People, racism, all that stuff has been able to break into our house, our community, because we've been bound by the disunity amongst us. I don't care what other nationalities you see. We allow so many things to separate us: our skin tone, our weight, our jobs, where we live, our hairstyles, all these things that we allow to separate us, our genders. And in other nationalities and races, they stand together for the common good. But there's so much division amongst us. And the whole world is well aware of it, Shay. They're well aware that if they whisper to one of us, dangle something in front of us, we'll definitely go against each other. Or if they plant a seed over here of fear or discord or strife, they're able to put it into the community and able to peg light skin against dark skin, short hair against long hair. These silly things that have kept us separated for so many years. And this is why you're able to see on live television a group of us standing around watching someone kill one of us because of the level of respect, disrespect that we have for each other, the level of disunity that we have with each other. I'm talking about even in the foundation of our household, the black male being removed from the home, these sorts of things. Black love, yes, our communities, because I'm black, I have to talk about what we see. You don't see family anymore. The establishment and the foundation of family was broken, and that broke everything. That broke everything. Men and women not seeing love in each other and standing together and sticking together. Baseball games and community events turning into fights and different things instead of us saying, you know what, this is ours. We're going to take care of it, and we're not letting anybody else come in here and sell us poison, poison our minds, poison our spirits. And these are the things that we have allowed, and the strong man in our community, which is us, has been bound. And so they're able to break in and totally allow us to destroy us, and they know that we're not going to stick together. So you don't see them killing Asians like they kill us. You don't see them killing Spanish people like they kill us. And you definitely don't see them killing each other like they kill us, because they know we're going to stand, we're going to record, and because we don't want to seem like a troublemaker, we're going to go somewhere and be quiet and say, that's not my problem. That has to change.
Whew, they don't like this kind of talk, but of course, this is candid, crucial community conversations, and this is exactly what we need. We need somebody, and that's why I was like thrilled when you said yes, because one thing I know about the Dannelle Mann as a community activist, you will see things from every angle and do not have a problem with boldly speaking to each angle. So I love that about you, Danielle. I love the fact that we can have this conversation and it not be taken inappropriate. But the reality is this is our reality. right?
Yes.
This is what we don't want to address. This is what we don't want to talk about, especially during a time as this. So in order for us to build unity back in our communities, we first must understand how we first bite and devour one another.
Come on. And if I may say this, Shay, because I forgot to say this, the most silent killer and the most obvious one amongst us is the spirit of competition. It has become so, it makes me want to vomit. We have a hard time lifting each other up, promoting each other, pushing each other without wanting some type of reward, some type of recognition. Community activists, let me say this, Shay. Long before there were cameras, I was in these streets. I had underground meetings that have never ever reached Facebook, never ever reached a TV camera. And I have had some of the greatest leaders in our community in a room in the basement at the Wycomico County Library. And I've never spoke of the things we had in that meeting, but it was for the better good of our community. We've got to stop doing things for cameras. We've got to stop doing things for competition and recognition and for clout, and do it because we know that change is needed and we need each other to create the change. I can't do what I need to do, Shay, without you. I need you. You need me. I don't care if we are in separate communities. We need each other. When we start learning to understand that we are not each other's competition, but each other's elevation. I am your strength. You are my strength. What you lack, I have, and what I have, what I lack, you have. And that's the problem. Because we're too busy trying to run to the end of a race when God said the race wasn't given to the swift or to the strong, but to the man that could endure. We're in competition for nothing.
You know what? That is so powerful, and it is the truth. I am so big on support, even when, like I said, your name shouldn't have to be on the program for you to show up to support. Because ultimately, we had the conversation about elected officials and how it's important to vote. Not just voting them in, but after you vote them in, continue to show up to support the persons or person that you have elected in the office. That competition spirit has to stop in order for us to really bring that unity back in the community. Just as you just stated, what you lack, I need. What you lack, I have, and what I lack, you have. And that's what's going to create the change that we want to see, how our nation move. It starts with our local communities. We have a lot of people that's running to different protests, and I believe that it's a wonderful thing. We lost Dannelle, so hopefully she'll come back in. I believe that it's a wonderful thing. However, we have to get back to building our local communities, starting right where we stand. That's one of the things that God gave me some time ago. Start right where you stand. You can't do but what you can do with what's in your reach. So as we wait for Dannelle to join us back, Kathy, thank you so much for joining us tonight, as well as Sharonda. As you are tuning in, please post your comments, your questions that you have for myself and or Dannelle, because we want to get those things answered. We want to get those questions answered. Again, this is Candid, Crucial Community Conversations. And we actually have these conversations because we know that some conversation is needed in order to really talk about the sore eye or the things that's in our community that's keeping us from coming together in unity to serve and support one another, to see us to build that bridge, to remove the gaps so that we can again uplift and support one another. This doesn't have anything to do with one particular race over another, but it's about educating our community on how to be engaged, how to be involved, even when it's not on a platform speaking, but it's maybe you in the background pushing out the plates, or pushing out flyers, or simply sharing out a broadcast that's giving you education and resources to support and to serve on various committees or within organizations. So I'm hoping that we will get Dannelle back with us. I am super excited that she has decided to join us tonight. But keeping in mind also, if you've missed the previous broadcast, please go back and check out some of the previous broadcasts, as we've had a lot of other community activists come and join the conversation to talk about how to combat the social injustices within our society, to build that bridge in order to bring unity back into our communities. So with that being said, I just want you all to be post your questions, post any comments that you may have as it relates to the discussion, or just give us some feedback as it relates to the topic of discussion. What are your thoughts about racism? What are your thoughts about building a community and engaging the community? Because we want, of course, this isn't a one-man army, but it's going to take a force of us coming together to stand up and say, listen, enough is enough. How can I put my hands to the plow? What can I do in order to see my community come together? How can I support our young people? Because ultimately, that's who's hurting. We have a younger generation who's in our local communities that are hurting because they lack love, because they lack support, because they lack resources, because they lack the knowledge. And as we know in the scripture, Hosea says that the people are perishing for a lack of knowledge. So how will we be intentional about reaching one to teach one? How will we convey the information to community to say, it does not matter how old you are, it does not matter how young you are, we need you, and we need you to help to push the vision, to bring that unity back into our local community. So we have Dannelle back with us. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and give it right back to you, Dannelle, to continue to just talk about your process. How did you, or what triggered you to become a community activist?
I despise injustice of any type, of any type. You know, coming from a place of many different aspects of our avenues of abuse, I've always felt like any type of injustice is not something that I need to sit back and be quiet about. I won't allow another person to mistreat or misuse another person. I believe we all are accountable for what we allow and what we see and what we don't speak up on. You know, now when we were growing up, you know how they told us, you know, see something, mind your business. But minding your business in our community has really allowed a lot of things to happen to us. My hush, hush, don't tell, don't say this, don't speak on those things. But sometimes you have to get to a point where you're bold enough to say, that's not right. They shouldn't treat you like that. And we need to do something about it. I think I really went hard in after my sister got murdered, and she was murdered in a domestic violence situation. And there was, at the year 2010, there was a lot of violence around here. And I can tell you that April Jackson, Jermichael Mitchell, and I, we used to march through this community. We didn't have bullhorns. So my voice carries. I would be in the front, stop the violence, you know, no more violence. And I understood that whatever was going on or needed to go on had to start within our own families, within our own communities. You know, we can go to different areas or different races or nationalities and talk to them about what they are doing or not doing for us. But the problem is we need to talk to each other about what we're allowing each other to do to us and what we're allowing other people to do. Because people treat you how you present yourself. They treat you the way you treat yourself. You know, and even some of us who are, and let me not take away from some of us who may treat ourselves well. Some of society, because of racism, is still, they don't care how educated we are, how well spoken we are. They're still going to treat us like what they think of us. But I'm talking about solidifying the unity in our own community so we get to the point where outside forces know not to come in our communities and do certain things. Because we're not going to stand for you killing us. We're not going to stand for you abusing us. As a matter of fact, we stand so unified, we're not standing for any of us killing us. And there is the problem. There is the problem. And so, yeah.
I love when you said we are all accountable to what we see, but we don't say.
Mm-hmm.
So I was also raised in a generation where what goes on in this house stays in this house.
Mm-hmm.
I am also too that one that does not like injustice of any kind.
Mm-mm.
And I'm talking about even down to the simplest thing of a person being in the grocery store, an item is on sale, but the cashier not even asking, do you have your MVP card? Where I will interject and say, oh, you know, those sodas are 3 for $5. Here's my MVP card.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to dismiss the cashier, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just the small things that really take me by a storm. And it's just like, are you kidding me? So when we start talking about much larger injustice, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking about just the injustice from police brutality, but I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about even in our system,
Yes.
how we determine who qualifies for benefits, how we determine who gets an opportunity to go to various schools, how we determine who
Come
gets
on.
to go to the next grade, how we determine the grading system. All of these things factor in to the injustice when we're talking about inequality.
That's right. The weights are unbalanced. They are unbalanced and they always have been. All the way back to the writing of the Constitution, the weights are unbalanced. They're unbalanced.
So
Yeah.
then from there, how do we balance them out? How do we balance them out? How do we get people empowered to say, you don't need a college degrees or so many degrees that you got more degrees than the thermometer, but yet you're sitting on them. You're not utilizing them, right? How do we get a people empowered that do not want to engage because they lack the education of the process to become engaged? I didn't know anything about actually running for an elected office, right? However, I went to research because there was a pulling in my spirit. Like this was
Mhm.
a God thing, right? God was like, you want to make change, and the change that you're trying to make, you're not going to do much on the level in what you're trying to do. But I need you to get into
Mhm.
position to understand what it means to be in politics. And I got to be honest, if I be transparent, I
Yeah.
did not care for politics. I just knew
Mhm.
my ancestors fought for me to vote, and I needed to vote my party line.
Mhm.
But I didn't study to see what my party line would stand for. Because
Absolutely.
just because someone is a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, sometimes they don't even know what it means to be a registered Democrat or Republican. So they are actually fighting for things that I'm naturally against, but I'm
Mhm.
supporting them
Mhm.
because
Or an
I'm not.
independent.
Exactly, or independent, because I'm
Mhm.
not taking the extra time to do my own
Mhm.
homework.
Yeah.
So even with politics, you don't have to have a degree to engage in local politics. When Delegate Sharice Sample Hughes was on and Councilwoman Don Sella Wilson, they shared you can
Mhm.
actually volunteer on committees, on
Mhm.
local committees within your local jurisdiction or on
Mhm.
a state level.
Mhm.
However, one of the things that I always tell people, start where you stand. You don't have to jump 4 all the way in 12 feet knowing you can't swim.
Mhm. But you
So
said it. You said it when you said, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but when you said racism was taught, ignorance is taught. And one thing that we fail to do is step outside of the box of the stuff that we think that we should be in as a Black community. And so we veer away from politics and we don't teach our children about politics. One of the things that, if I may say this boldly, we really put the responsibility of schools and outside sources to teach our children what we should be teaching them in our homes.
say that
Politics is
again.
not something we don't talk about politics in our households. We don't talk about a lot of people don't even think voting that we should vote because it really doesn't make a difference. But they need to see more of us in office. They need to see more of us in our local and on a national level. They need to see more of us. And we need to be teaching in our homes, listen, the way to make change is you have to do this, and that. But we don't. And that's where everything has to start within the foundation of our households and our communities. And we have to start within what we're teaching, what we're implementing in our communities, what we're allowing, not just register to vote. Help somebody. Do you know how many people don't even understand that process? You're giving me something and I have no idea why I'm doing it or what to do with it. So we need more people who are like Doncella Wilson, like Sharice Samples Hughes, like April Jackson, willing to come in and say, hey, listen, I'm going to teach a class on what all this means, and we need to, as parents, we need to not just take our children out to play basketball and football and to be in these dance groups. We need to teach them about what it means to use your voice and to use the power within you to create change, not only in your household, but within your community, and furthermore, in the nation.
Whoop, there it is. That is so true. And again, you said something, and it's so profound. We have Mr. Shane Biggity Bell with us tonight. He said, nice. Miss Patricia Hawkins, she said, voting is our voice. But when we don't really understand the process of voting, and this is one of the things that we've been intentional about, bringing on individuals that have that knowledge. You can't claim to be an expert at everything. However, you have to get connected. You have to get into networks that have the expert knowledge and be teachable to listen to. How do I get engaged? How do I become involved? And Miss Patricia Hawkins said it best. As you said, Danielle, parent education. COVID-19 did something for many parents that many parents wanted to avoid for many years.
That's right.
Guess what? Government is not taught in the school system anymore. It's not taught in the school system anymore. So when we're not having those conversations, our children are raised to not even consider becoming a politician, or they don't no longer have a dream of becoming a president. Because in the community, what's spotlighted is sports, music, and art. But when we really start having conversations about government is the foundation. It rules the foundation of all that we do. Miss Patricia Hawkins says history is not taught either. So who will educate? Not our history. American history is taught. But who will educate not just Americans, all Americans on our history?
Absolutely. What were we before you all enslaved us, because we were not slaves? And I'm gonna tell you something. You said something profound. We're not teaching, what we're not teaching, government not being taught in the schools. And you know what else is not being taught in our communities? To build your own, to get your own, to get together and buy land, to buy houses, real estate. Those things aren't taught in our communities. We need to be able, there should be someone in our community that looks like us buying houses, buying real estate, buying buildings. How many, when you go to these corner stores, you don't see us? What are we teaching our children when we're not investing in each other? See, this is why I go back to the foundation of trusting each other, uniting together, because government, all that plays a part. Teaching to build our own, to garden. We need these older women or these younger women, because there's some younger women my age, because I'm still young, who know how to garden, and I have reached out to them. Teach our children to grow their own. Teach our children to build their own. Let me tell you something, Shay, that I teach my daughter, and I'll teach it to her until my last breath. I teach my daughter while she's 13. I have brought everything I could for her to find out what her gift is, what her craft is, what God has ordained for her to do, because I don't want her sight set on going to college, sitting on the degree and working for somebody else for the rest of her life. Absolutely not. We have to change the narrative of that. We have to start teaching our kids that they are more than what you said, basketball and music and those sorts of things. You can be whatever you desire to be, but we have to start in our communities building our own, supporting our own. There goes that S word, supporting our own, encouraging our own, uplifting our own. And a lot of times, what we're teaching in our homes is strife and envy too, because we say too many negative things about each other in front of our children. Just like racism is taught, dissension and division is taught. We need to teach our daughters, Shay, when they are in elementary school. That's your sister. That's your people. That's someone that you honor, that you respect, that you love, that you help, that you support. We need to teach that young. So when they hit middle school, they're not in competition and fighting and getting suspended because of jealousy and envy. And we need to teach our own children self-esteem, love, unity, togetherness.
Listen, you're right on it. I agree. And that's exactly why, I am mindful, even in the dysfunctional patterns
Yes.
that I was raised in, that I had to break. I had to break them because I needed to understand the importance of changing the narrative. Because I allow my children to see me in dysfunctional relationships
Come on.
and me actually fulfilling dysfunctional patterns. What happens is they take on the adaptivity and the behaviors to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
But then as parents, we get mad, we lose our patience, we grow frustrated with our children because we see us in them.
Whew.
And it's not for us to beat it out of them, but it's for us to deal with us.
Yeah, whew. That was it right there. That was
We
it.
have to deal with us first, but and I got to be honest, I speak transparently about all of my process. I was one of those parents that automatically assume, oh, I'm the parent, you're the child, you listen to me, blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, is that growing or developing, helping my child to develop? My son is 13 years old. When we started this pandemic, before any packet came home from school, the first week I let them rest. The next week it was where school is officially in session.
Absolutely.
They had journalism. My son couldn't even write down his emotions on paper because we live in a society where men are not entitled, nor are they pushed to express their emotions without having the fear of being labeled as something that they're not. But I said, you know what? We're changing the narrative. The devil is a liar. You are a man, you are a human being, and you got emotions. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Because if we don't talk about it now, you'll be a grown man in a marriage or in a relationship in the community, misappropriating your anger because you have no control. There you go. Self-control over who you are. And you don't know how to tunnel your emotions. So you were right on it. Patricia Hawkins said, they're not taught economics. Buying from our own. She says, Harriet Ross Tubman said, teach the youth to grow their own food.
Yes, Patricia, yes.
Miss Leonard said, listen to our children. Give them a voice, not force what we want on them.
Yes,
that's it. Many of us are living through our children. What we did not do when we was young, when we did not fulfill, when we was a teenager, we automatically put our children in our shoes. Oh, we wanted to be a cheerleader, but we gained 50 pounds before we was 18 years old because we was being grown before our time, got pregnant, and now we out of shape, so we can't cheerlead. So now we pushing our daughter who's not even interested in cheerleading to be a cheerleader.
You're talking heavy.
When we need to really be investing in our children. And this is why our community is in such of a rampage.
Absolutely.
Because we have a lot of youth, excuse me, Danielle, we have a lot of youth that has not even tunneled into their emotions, number one. Two, they have not even been able to identify that greatness is still on them when they lack the educational standard to be who the system said that they were supposed to be. Go ahead.
Shay, look what happened. Let's look at this. Look what happened during the pandemic. The plandemic. Look what happened. Look at all the households that were forced to use the gifts within them to survive. All of us, we were selling everything. T-shirts, collard greens in jars, everything, sea malls, everything. All of us took what was in us. And some of us didn't even know that we had these skills. And what did our children learn by watching us? It was amazing watching the entrepreneurs in our community surface and to see the households working together. My daughter was working with me. I saw other households where they had their children helping in the businesses. And this is what, come on, let's talk real, what other nationalities and races teach their children at a young age. Even if they choose not to work in the business, because we don't have to force that on them. Some of them have a desire to help and to work in the business. As a matter of fact, some of them have gifts to build their own business. And during this time that we have had to sit still by force, we've had no choice but for our survival skills to rise. And this is where, even now, it's about to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And we need to pay attention to what are we going to do within our own households, within our own communities when this next level of the pandemic, because it's another one coming, it's something else coming. When we go into this next level, because we'll never go back to the norm. What are we teaching in our households so that what the people in our households can go out and create change in our communities and our nation? This doesn't start and end with us. This is bigger than us. And that's all I want us to understand. We need each other. We
I like
have
you.
to.
I like when you said the pandemic.
Absolutely.
There was a planning that had to transition throughout the pandemic. So when you said pandemic, I said, "Oh, that's good."
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say, as you said, we can't force our children to do anything, but some of us, we need to be more intentional
Yeah.
about involving our children in process, because
Mm-hmm.
you do have some children that have that desire to want to release and unlock creativity. And that
Mm-hmm.
creativity starts as early as the age of 5.
Yes.
Well, Shay, how do you know? I'm glad that you asked, Mary. Thank you for joining us tonight. Mary says, "Hey, ladies." So
Hey.
I'm glad that you asked. How do you know that this creativity lies in a 5-year-old? I've watched my twins since we actually launched Wow Inspired back in May of last year. The older two have already launched the Wow Inspired Kids, and they do their thing every Sunday. And I've watched the twins mimic what they see the older two do. Not
Mm-hmm.
only did I watch them mimic, but I've seen my 5-year-old daughter take and do a whole YouTube tutorial without a phone, without a light, without anything. So we have to, as parents, be intentional about investing in our children. We have to know that the same way we wanted to foresee ourselves in our dreams, that the investment starts now. You're right. Other nationalities, other races, they start the investment early. And
Yeah.
when you said that, I said, you know what? Another thing or another conversation to be had on the Candid Crucial Community Conversations is one about legalizing your business.
Absolutely. Come on
Now,
now.
I'm not a brand expert, but I am connected to people that can
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation. Well, how do you
Absolutely.
go on Merlin? How do you register the business? How do
Yes.
you open up tax accounts? Because ultimately, we still deal with this competitive spirit.
Come on, sis.
So you
Absolutely.
had people even during this pandemic that
Mm-hmm.
called in on other people, health
Yes.
departments, and all of that. How do we build community without getting rid of this competition spirit? We can't.
Come on. Come on. It has to be taught. It's something I told my 13-year-old about 3 years ago that I really, really believed that we needed to have self-esteem classes taught in school at a very young age. First of all, taught in our household. But I really think that they needed to, because everybody can't teach that, especially if they don't possess it. So I said, starting in elementary school, fourth, fifth, and like fourth and fifth grade, before you get to the sixth and seventh grade, even implementing it more there. So by the time you get to high school, you understand that there is no competition for you because God only made one of you. You're unique, beautifully and wonderfully put together. When we start teaching our kids that there is no other you, so you don't have to feel less than, you don't have to do something like you said, making those phone calls. I saw all that. You don't have to downgrade, downplay, or dismiss someone else to uplift yourself. It doesn't work like that. When we start teaching these kinds of things young, the next generation of people will already have it established, and it'll be a whole nother world. But again, let's talk about the people who don't possess it to be able to teach it. Everybody ain't gonna go, Shay. Everybody's not willing to participate, Shay. And no longer can we concern ourselves with who's willing to go. We have to take the people who said, I'm ready to go, and we've got to go. Because one thing I learned about people, once you build it, they'll come. They will come. When they
That's the
see you
truth.
doing it, they'll talk about it bad. They'll talk about us bad. Oh, why Shay got that show? Or why Danielle selling that CMOS? Or why they selling them t-shirts? But once they see us doing it and not even being concerned about what you're talking about on the side, they'll too want to do it. But one thing I heard this saying a long time ago, it's enough room out here for all of us to eat. It really is. When we learn that not only is it enough room for us to eat, there's a big table for us all to sit together and bring in our own individual dishes, and we'll all be well.
That's good. So just some of the comments. That's so good. You can't teach if you don't possess it.
Mm-mm.
And that's the problem. A lot of us are skirting in lanes that we don't belong in.
Hmm.
Or they're trying to teach something prematurely that they're still struggling with.
Yes, that's
So he
good.
said, Miss Leonard said, transparency. I was taught that get every credit card there is, and then if you can't pay it, file bankruptcy. See, that's sad. Most of our people don't have any land to pass down to our children. We don't know anything about finances, credit, stocks, and shares. That is the truth indeed. We definitely have to have a conversation about credit, not just acquiring good credit, but being able to maintain and manage it. You can
Yes,
get the credit, but can you maintain and
that's
manage it?
right.
You'll find yourself right back into the same potholes, enslaved to the credit debt and to the creditor because of so much debt.
Absolutely.
The slave master still has control over us as a race. It started with the field slave and the house slave being treated differently. It then was light skin versus dark skin, and it has carried over
Over
and
and over.
over.
Yes,
Is
Patricia.
that is the truth. So I
Yes.
guess now we come into a close of tonight's session. My question is, because we see this carried over and over and over again, now Danielle, I know you do some amazing things, not just in Wacomico County, but even in the extension to other areas, trying to be just that lending hand to others. You do a lot without even making mention of it because you're not after recognition. And that's one thing I can appreciate about you. Mary says, I am in Forex and I'm just learning all of this at the age of 22. But
Wow.
even in the Forex, there is some financial literacy that she's being given in
Yes,
that process. And she's 22. So
absolutely.
imagine when we start feeding our children that information at the age of 8. Be mindful. You can actually put your child before they're 18 on your credit cards as
Absolutely.
an authorized user to start building their credit. Wait, that's a different conversation and topic of discussion,
Mm.
but that was good.
Yeah,
So
that
I
was.
guess my thing to you, Danielle, Miss Leonard said, before I come back to you, Danielle, she said it has to start early. As a little girl, I had a complex about my dark skin. We
Mhm.
have to instill in our kids early that they are beautiful, fearless, and can achieve anything that sets
Yeah,
their mind to.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So we have to be
Absolutely.
our greatest teacher, not just to our own children, but how are you going to help those children within the community that lack the guidance, that lack
Yeah,
the resource? Because the
there you
reality
go.
is you have some children that are very disrespectful to their parents,
Hmm.
but they will see something in you and
Yeah.
will respect you as a mentor, as a community activist, to bring some of their intimate things to you. Can
Mhm.
you maintain the trust that they have given you as an adult without being able to compromise who you are in their life? That's a
Mm.
different question.
Mm.
However, back to you, Danielle. All of that you're doing now, you're a life coach. I just want you to kind of talk about what you do as a life coach and how people can connect with you and how and what you would say is double loaded question, how they can connect with you, what you do, and how what you would say to someone that wants to engage but they lack spiritual understanding and they lack the connections to engage.
First of all, let me answer that last question first. Step out of the place of fear. We have become so comfortable being afraid and so complacent with what we're used to. You have to step. If you never step, you'll never understand how far you can really walk. We refuse to step. All it takes sometimes is for just one foot to step out. You're not always going to see the end of the thing, but you'll never reach the beginning of a thing if you don't step out. You have to be willing to say, I've been here for far too long. So let me tell you about what I do. And I changed my name from real life coach to real life purpose pusher, because I realized that that was who God called me to be. I am someone who will push the person into their purpose. A counselor or a therapist wants you to keep coming back because that's how they make their money. I don't care if you just do one session with me, as long as in that session you grab hold of who you are and you run with becoming the best version of yourself. My job is not in my coaching. My job is not to keep them dependent upon me, but to help them to become dependent upon the Father and the God within themselves, so that they can keep going further and further, evolving and becoming a better version of themselves. And the only person that can really help them become better at being them is them, being honest and transparent and open with themselves. So, let me tell you something. I absolutely, of everything I do, I adore this life purpose pushing thing, this life coaching thing. It is a joy unspeakable to see someone transform on the other end of the phone or via video, for them to say in a week or two or in a month or so, I achieved everything that I wrote down on the paper in our session. Life changing. It does something for me just to know that they've gotten closer to God, closer
Come
to
on.
themselves, closer to becoming better versions of them. And even the people around them are affected by the choices and decisions that they're now making, because they stepped out of place of comfortability, complacency, and absolute fear. We cannot continue to be afraid of change. A lot of us are literally walking around dead because we refuse to live and live well. It is for us. It's there. It's open. And I'm available. You can message me, and I will definitely set up a session with you. I do individual sessions. I do premarital sessions. I do group sessions, and I have a confidentiality agreement. What goes on in my sessions stay between me, the person, and God, and I will not breach it for anyone. So thank you, Shay. Thank you. Thank you for continuing to do what you do. I appreciate you.
To God be all the glory. And you know what I had said? I had to get in my mind. It does not matter who supports, who shows up, who doesn't like, share, come on, comment, whatever. Ultimately, God, you gave me the vision.
Yes.
And I'm not
Run with
going
it.
to be selfish, but I'm going to be selfless and avail myself to you in this time, because someone is going to walk away from one of these candid, crucial community conversations with another level of understanding, a
Yeah.
different perspective, and a greater insight of what is going on around them, to promote and to empower them to engage in building their local communities. So
Yeah.
that's exactly why we do this. And I'm excited, Danielle. And, as I said, we haven't spoken in a while, but ultimately I see God working through you. And I'm so excited for what's about to come and what is coming for you as it relates to your purpose push and life coaching that you are doing. I too am a purpose pusher. And I felt
Yeah.
that when you say when you're able to see somebody to go
Yeah.
from a lack of understanding of who they are in the kingdom to
Yes.
actually pursuing who God has purposed them to be, because we know the scripture declare many are the plans in a person's heart. You got
Yeah.
some good plans,
Come
but it's
on.
the Lord's purpose that will prevail. So
Yeah.
again, I appreciate you, Danielle, for
You're so
doing this
welcome.
broadcast. Y'all make sure y'all tune in every single Monday at 7:30 for our continuation of our candid, crucial community conversations. Next Monday, we will have some mental health professions from not just Maryland, but other states that will be on with me next Monday to just talk about how some of these issues that we are dealing with, not only in the nation, but in our local communities, affect us, and how we can combat some of the some of the different behaviors and some of the effects that we get from some of the situations and experiences we have gone through. And then I know we've already scheduled out to July the 20th. We have some local candidates that are running for our local Board of Education here in Dorchester County. Please join in with us. If you are a advocate or if you are a person that's just intentional about building community, seeing things from a versatile perspective, the only thing that I ask on this platform is that we be sensitive and mindful of our audience, as well as applying grace to what we discuss, and also being respectful to not utilize profanity. That is it. That's all. Everything else is free game. We want to talk real. We want to talk transparent, and we want to talk what's relevant now, what's needed and what's relevant. So again, I pray you all have an amazing night. Lindsay Jackson tuned in and said, yes, we cannot be afraid. Miss Patricia Hawkins says, thank you, ladies. Miss Patricia, we appreciate you for tuning in with us as well. And they said, you ladies are powerful. Listen, all glory goes to God. We thank you for joining us. And Miss Tiffany Moore says, I love her.
We love you.
She just loves you, and we love you too, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us tonight. And for each and every one of you who have shared this broadcast, how we appreciate you, because again, it's the community and the conversations that we will continuously to have to build the unity within our community. Have an amazing night, guys. Until next Monday, take care of yourselves and each other.